Oh,
Just gracias.
It is pretty chilly. I wish I had a sweater.
also like this is the time of year we should get there. Like
Yes, sir. Okay, I will go.
Hey. How are you? Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you. Mind by the name?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So did they do anything about BLM's actions on pulling the leases?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Do we need to do a resolution or something?
Probably. Wouldn't hurt. I think we wrote a letter asking the state who's brought in the lawsuit, and we want to intervene. Be one of the interveners on the lawsuit. I need to check with Mac, but I think that's what we did.
Very good. We're live up there.
Okay. On the BLM pulling those leases, did we write a letter to put in, ask an intervener
Yes.
in their lawsuit?
Yeah,
That's what I
I sent it to
thought.
Reg.
Jamie was asking.
Yeah.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and start the Board of Commissioners work session meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone who's here with us today. Glad you're here. And we're grateful you stormed the cold morning to be here. Welcome, commissioners and staff. I'm grateful for the cool weather. I heard it was very warm these past couple of days, but probably wondering why I'm saying this. I've been kind of on travel for a bit, so it's nice to be back to my normal routine. But what's normal, right? So let's see. Just did roll call. We're calling this meeting to order officially at 9:02 a.m. If you're not aware of the date, today's June the 18th, 2024, and this is our work session. So I'll go ahead and do the next item, which is a roll call. Commissioner Adams, are you here? Commissioner Harvey, are you here?
No.
Commissioner Stubbs?
Here.
There's three, and we have a full quorum today. All right, full quorum. We don't need to declare conflict right now, right?
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to our agenda items. Looks like we have 3 items. So, Mac.
I don't think see Kristen here, so we'll skip to item number 2. This is a presentation and update from the Utah Department of Natural Resources,
Yes.
Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. We'll get them out of here first so that you guys don't have to hang around and listen to our zoning and planning. But turn it over to, I don't know, Ryan. Turn it over to Ryan. Ryan's has been super helpful last several years here with State Fire.
So my name's Ryan MacArthur. I'm the San Juan County Fire Warden here. We deal with all public lands, well, not public lands, I should say state and private lands, unincorporated lands. We work with them on help, fire reductions, landscaping, not necessarily landscaping, but cleaning up anything the fire could cause catastrophic fires. So we're working through the lands and landowners, that kind of stuff. I've brought Duncan. I am not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I'll mess it up. But he's our WUI, our Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator for the division. So his group, they have a fuels group that comes down and they do a lot of mitigation work throughout the communities. They cover all of the southeast area, which is Carbon, Emery, Grand, and San Juan counties. So we'll have him do some presentations on some projects and things he's got coming up. As far as fires coming up this year, as you can see, we are starting to dry out. Things are getting there. We're not completely into critical conditions yet, but our FMO group, our Fire Management Officer group through the state of Utah, they meet almost weekly, if not twice a month. And with them they're constantly doing fuel samples. So we're out. We got people out on the ground covering all the areas, and they're doing fuel samples. So they're taking samples out of trees, sagebrush, grass, that kind of stuff, running them through a dryer, see how much moisture is still in them. As of right now, San Juan County, we're setting pretty good still with our fuel content, our moistures. So we're up. But like I said, we're drying out this last windstorm coming up, so we'll get some new records or some new samples this week. We do have more critical fire weathers coming in towards the end of the week. The heat's coming back with the dry winds, start drying us out even some more. So we'll see what them fuel samples come out and then start deciding if we need to switch over and go into restrictions, any of that kind of stuff throughout the area. We go into restrictions. We do it as a group, I guess is the way of saying it, but we take the Forest Service BLM and then the state, the public lands, and we do across the board mutual thing. So like the forest could still be green, but the private lands down the valley are clear dry, and they intend to put it into restrictions. So the Forest Service will go in early. The counties will come in, maybe a little bit later on the backside, trying to make that middle ground to make it to where everybody goes into restrictions at the same time. It just makes it easier. It makes it simpler for law enforcement, everybody to enforce it, us to enforce it, and go into restrictions for fires.
Would you will you explain your relationship with the Navajo Nation? I think Jamie and Sylvia would both like to understand that.
So as far as my relation with the Navajo Nation, we are in talks with the Navajo Nation. So we do have communication with them. On the Navajo lands I have a authority to go fight initial attack fires. So if there's something that comes up down there on the Navajo Nation, anywhere in the state of Utah, they have given me authority that I can go in and fight any of them initial attack fires, help out any resources there. From there, we determine and we contact either Shiprock or my brain just went crazy,
Window
but
Rock.
Flagstaff. Is it Flagstaff? I think are the two different dispatch centers depending on where we hit on the nation. So pretty much from Highway 191 going to the west, we go through Flagstaff, out across Navajo Mountain, all that stuff kind of goes through Flagstaff. Everything this other way, we go with Shiprock. So we do go in, talks with them, go down there and help them out. If there's fires down there, been down on several, down along the river. Our cooperators, which would be Bluff Fire, that's a cooperator that we have signed up with the state of Utah. They're in the same thing, and they can go help either Montezuma Creek or Monument Valley Fire, any of them coming through with them fire departments. So we are in, cahoots with them, under talks with them. We go down once a year to a big Four Corners convention that brings in all the Navajo Nation, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, everybody, and discuss how to fight border fires and different things coming up and down both sides. So this year I've got Chance Mitchell here with me. He's my assistant, so we've got, set up for that. So we'll have a full staffed engine from the state side. We'll be helping with that. With that also, we've got all the local VFDs here, volunteer fire departments, that we've red carded 28. So we got 28 red carded personnel. That's personnel that have been trained on how to fight wildfires. They've went through an arduous pack test, which is carrying a 45-pound pack 3 miles within 45 minutes. They're trained up on how to handle, wildfires that's coming in to make sure that we keep them safe and try to minimize as much impact as possible. I'm trying to think, what else is there anything else? Any questions?
We always have that relationship with the nation because of the part of the reservation that exists in San Juan County. So I was hoping that that you'd established a relationship with them.
So we've established that both with the Navajo Nation, and actually we do have some Ute land here with the Ute tribes out of Colorado. So we are in the discussions and collaboration with them. They're kind of in the same interagency group with us, with our Forest Service, BLM, the Navajo Nation, BIA, and then state. We're all kind of in whole group, so we'll go help out wherever it's needed. So if we need help with the Forest Service, we've already got them agreements in place that we can get them to come and utilize on our lands, or if it's on their land, then we're able to take our cooperators, which are our volunteer fire departments and people like that, and actually go fight that. And then if we end up having some catastrophic fire, big one, we pull the trigger and we can bring in a lot of local or outside agencies, a lot of other resources through our dispatch center there in Moab.
Well, if I can start with some questions that I would like to say, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Adams, for always having the tribe and the nation at heart. That's huge for us. So I'd like to begin by saying thank you for, I think it's you guys that are working with Utah Navajo Health Systems in regards to allowing UNHS to gather the wood that you guys might get.
Yeah, and that's a program that the Forestry Service and you're part of too with it. And then our forester that when we do projects with that, is they do start setting that up and then delivering that firewood through the Navajo Nation.
That's wonderful, and my Commissioner Stubbs and I's deep appreciation for that program. That's very valuable. It does go to the elders, and it goes to those that are in need, because cost of fuel is one of the biggest expenses for a lot of our Native community members back home, the travel. And I'm sure maybe you do have an existing agreement with the church as well. I'm not sure if that is there, but they're also another entity that is among the tribe down south that do help, and they're also looking for opportunities to access wood. If they're not part of your partnership, I would recommend you look at them as well, because I know you're trying to clear areas and looking at place to take all the wood that you do have to get them less to be clear, so that they're not a hazard.
Right.
So that's one recommendation I would make, because they are also there. And I know that the chapters themselves may have some interest in also participating in the program, because they might be able to pull together funds to transport from your site back to their chapters. So that would be my next recommendation. And the other question another thought that I had was, I know for the communities that are high and at risk, Navajo Mountain is probably the most at risk, because not only are they away from Tuba City, but they're quite a ways from Page and Kayenta. And I think for the leadership there at the chapter, they would value some support in understanding any agreements that may be in place. To be honest, Commissioner Stubbs and myself, because we're not necessarily new, but we're just catching up to some of the past agreements that have been in existence in place far before we came into the picture. we'd like to be educated on that, because when there's a real emergency, you have people running around and you don't have structure and there's chaos. But if you have education, you have a plan, and the community is educated in that plan, and they're aware on what the response process is, it's more effective to get everyone involved and stopping any fire that can happen. Malcolm Lehigh out of White Mesa, he also would need some support. His community lives in a place where there's a lot of cedar trees, and I don't think they understand the risk that could be there for them, but they would like the support and being able to be self-sufficient in clearing what they need to in their community so that they're not at risk. I know there's a lot of hunting that goes down near them. There's a lot of shooting that happens during the fall, but they sure would be happy to receive that support. So I would recommend a visit with Malcolm Lehigh.
Okay.
But thank you for your presence. Thank you for the support that you do have. And please, if you can work through our administrator to highlight some of the important agreements that do exist for Commissioner Stubbs and I, we can do our part in educating the communities we represent to help support them and being prepared so that there is no chaos. So that would be very valuable for us. Thank you. Those are my comments, Commissioners. Commissioner Stubbs.
I just want to thank Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Harvey for their comments and questions. And I just want to say, when I first met you today, I know I was meeting somebody very important, but I didn't know why. And you are very important. I had the opportunity to be in California and witness the devastation of the fires, what had done to the forest there. And realizing, as I sat in meetings, the devastation that this have brought to the communities. They cannot qualify for insurance, even though they have. There's so many things that we haven't encountered here, and just seeing how those forests look like, it was sad for me to see that, and so you do have a very important job. And I have a question. So are you part of the program Wood for Life? Is that what you could? Because I've been in contact with them. I'm helping Oljeto chapter, and also the Blue Mountain Dene. It's not a chapter, but it serves about 800 Native Americans in the Blanding area, and also it serves works with the Westwater community. And so those are two communities that I was in a presentation with the 7 counties where Wood for Life came and did a presentation. So been in touch with them to have start a service for that, and then from that expand to the other chapters. But thank you. And this is not an easy job for you guys to do.
I thought you were going to say when you met him this morning, you realized you met somebody really tall.
No, I just.
I didn't stand up, Commissioner. So anyways, if there's not any questions for me with fire, I'll let Duncan do a little presentation on some of his projects and things that they have coming down this way, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Yeah, so you talked about some of the stuff that we're working on in our shop. So I'm Duncan Fuchise, Southeast Area Wild and Urban Interface Specialist. So that's private and state lands, fuels reduction. Been in this position for about 5 years. This is John, Wygand, who's the new assistant for me as of 2 weeks ago, so he has no idea what's going on. But yeah, just in terms of some projects that we're working on, so we got about $110,000 last year. So let me back up. We're all state and federal funded through grants, so we ask for money for specific projects. They fund us or they don't fund us. We've got about $110,000 for the Ray Mesa Pine Ridge area for the private lands out there to do fuels reduction. We did about 160 acres of mastication in the tamarisk and Russian olive down in Bluff. We've got another $100,000 to do probably a similar amount of work down there in Bluff. And those are kind of the big main projects. We've got some chipper days where people cut the material and then we chip it for them because people don't have the capacity to always drive it down to the dump or wherever they're going to bring it or burn it. Some people aren't comfortable with burning. So we do that down in Pack Creek Ranch. We're going to do that in Elk Meadows. And then maybe Bluff. I'm going to have to remember exactly. And then we did some burning on Geyser Pass last year in the San Juan County portion of Geyser Pass. Just some piles that were up there. But so those projects are kind of ongoing. We are still working with Wood for Life stuff. Our forester who left last week was kind of spearheading that, but it's my seasonals that tend to do that hauling down here. So they drop wood off at Brant Services here in town, at the Mission down in Bluff, and then we've looked at a site in Monument Valley to drop off wood. And so, we can't, all we can do is just bring wood and then tell whoever's there, disperse it how you want. That's basically what we do. But we've got more wood to haul that's in our yard down to one of those lots. We're trying to figure out how to make more financial sense because we're just hauling it ourselves with our dump trailer, but figuring out how to make contracts to actually have a contractor haul wood in a big truck. We haven't really cracked that puzzle yet because there's not a lot of people that specifically do that. So that's kind of up and coming. It's pretty expensive, so we're trying to figure that out money-wise, but that's coming up. And yeah, Navajo Mountain, we took a flight a few years ago with Utah Navajo Health Services up to the top of Navajo Mountain to look at a repeater. They're an 800 megahertz repeater they're putting in up there, making sure that made sense for where they were placing it for fire. So we were up there a handful of years ago. We used to be in contact with it's probably two chapter presidents ago. We were talking with, I don't remember his name, but about doing a CWPP, Community Wildfire Preparedness Plan for Navajo Mountain. It didn't really go anywhere at that time, and we tried to contact the next chapter president, and we didn't hear back. But that's something we can do, is just give advice, make plans. Pretty hard for us to do work on the nation. It's not that it's impossible, it's just pretty difficult with the bureaucracy, but that's something we can at least advise people on at the very least. So I think at some point it probably makes sense for me to get in contact with you, Jamie, and then we can kind of talk some more details on some of that stuff. So that's what we're here for. We're here for also any public landowners that are interested in work. We can kind of help out whoever as long as we can find the grant money for it. The next one will be some properties out in the Eastland area. We've got a little bit of interest out there and some pinyon juniper removal work, so we're going to see if there's more people interested. We got to get a block of people together in order to do that. It's hard to do one landowner at a time, but that's the big summary for me. Any questions for me?
Did you have your own personal card?
I did, but I gave them all out last week, so
It's okay. There's a contact person in Ochedo, which is Money Valley, have been working with me about this.
Great.
So I'll give you my card. You can form me your phone number, and then I can give her the contact person. And so I'm sorry, got too much going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you obviously, do you get involved with BLM or Forest Service?
A little bit. Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wonder, someday our watershed here on the mountain is going to go up in flames.
Yep.
And so much dead timber up on the mountain. We question the Forest Service, and they tell us, well, the only way we can do that is with a helicopter, and it's too expensive. But I'm not buying it.
Yeah. And that's something that when I first met with Tammy, she was like, we need to do something about that. And I talked with Mark Atwood, who was the previous fuels person, and he was kind of checked out at that point. But
They do have that shingle mill project with Forest Service that comes across the base of the mountain all the way from Blue Mountain Homes clear to Monticello, the mountain
The
road,
North Creek drainage.
the North Creek drainage. It's
Yeah, you
in
look
that
up-
section that's been,
You look up there and you can see
there's
nothing
still a
but
lot of work.
dead,
Yeah.
quaking asp every place. And I know there's a lot of dead and down, and our main, our water supply for Monticello is springs all across the face of that mountain, and I don't know.
yeah, and it's something that so the new fuels person is Terry Tilford, and the first time I met with him, I brought that up for North Creek because I'm like, this is a big concern for San Juan County, and was interested. It's just whether or not he's going to be able to deliver. We'll find out, But we're going to keep pushing them on that and see
Good.
how we can help them with that because there's a lot of ways we can help that. So
I have a question, mostly from my personal information. Okay, the fire that was in La Salle, there's lots of trees that are still standing.
Mhm.
So my question is who is in charge of that area? Which of the agencies, which one?
so that's all Forest Service basically
Forest Service.
entirely. Yeah.
Because what happened when it rains, those trees are coming down and it's creating lots of work for Tammy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As they, start plugging the
The drainages.
ditches and all this stuff. And so I just wonder if a project like Wood for Life would be a project that can go and cut those trees for wood,
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's be a logging contract, which I think would be pretty difficult for the Forest Service. Just in this area, we don't have a lot of logging equipment to be able to pull stuff off the mountain. But in the watersheds, the Forest Service and one of the nonprofits in Moab above the Pack Creek Ranch community completed $500,000 worth of drainage work to help prevent it from incising down into that into the small aquifer that's there for Pack Creek Ranch. So they completed that work. There's another probably $500,000 on the forest that needs to happen. And then I know that the EWP funding from the NRCS for the community is finally starting, is kind of what I heard after 2 years of delays. So I think that's going to happen soon. So at least the drainages are getting taken care of inside the drainages. But it's been a slow process is what I've heard.
Thank you.
So,
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you coming here and giving us that presentation and hearing from you. Turn the time over to item number 1, which is Kristen.
Thanks for rearranging me here.
Thank you.
We just wanted to give you a little bit of an update of the planning and zoning that's been happening, and a lot of it. So far,
Facebook now.
we are technically on Facebook. I'm also in the newspaper a lot. I'm not sure they've quoted me correctly, but
You really are.
but we just wanted to give you a heads up because these postcards went out on Friday. You should have received them either Friday or Saturday. We've had 5 work sessions, 2 planning commission meetings. We've got another work session. We got another planning commission meeting before you guys will see it. So a lot of time and effort's gone into this. The zoning ordinance and maps, we took the base that was created in 2021. And then the ordinance from 22. So these things have been out for a while. We're just polishing them up. A few things have changed since 22 to now, and so we've had to include a few more sections in the ordinance that we didn't see coming. But I just wanted to give you guys all the information because I'm sure community members will be asking. So this packet I gave you is a printed version of everything that's online on our planning website, just so that you can look through that. We are to the point where we're finalizing this, so public hearings have been sent. They're in the paper. They've been posted up at post offices, and the postcard went out. Just due to the amount of workload, we had to throw in an additional planning commission meeting just to try to get this done. And so our hopeful recommendation date will be Thursday, June 27th at 6 p.m. People can join online if they would like, or be here in person. There will be a public hearing associated with that meeting. If that recommendation goes forward, you will see it on July 2nd at 11 a.m. here. Also, a public hearing will be associated with it. But just wanted to give you the heads up that that's coming down the line here in just a few weeks. After our 24th work session, there might be a few updates to our website, but a lot of what you see on there is in the final or more final edition of things. So it's getting pretty there. So feel free to look through this. If you have any questions, you can ask me. But
figure out a way that we can answer in a simple way the questions about the little card.
yes, I know everybody's going, what's going on?
In the 7 coalition commission that I participate, we work with things like the railroads, and we talk about a simple way to answer questions. Because I had 2 people approaching me at the card, and I wasn't sure, while they were talking, and they were, they were older people, and they have fear. They're going to take my land, and I wasn't sure. So
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah, we can
miscommunication out there about
Yeah.
taxes going up and
So
a
if
lot
we
of stuff.
can, between you and Mac here, maybe what can be a simple version to say, so it doesn't the fear gets going bigger and bigger, just to be able to answer, okay, this is the purpose, I wasn't sure which direction to go, so I probably went in so many different directions because I hadn't seen the card, so I don't know what they were talking about, so.
So the simplest answer to give people is to have them go to our planning website, which is at the very bottom of the card.
Okay.
And they can look at all these resources online.
And some of the older people don't do that. They don't go online. So
They can also come in. I've got a couple extra hard copies, so they can come in if they want and pick up a hard copy. But things are not legally adopted yet, so that's why they need to check back in after June 24th for any updates from that last work session, which should be pretty minimal based on what's there
they
now.
should have been in the mail. Everybody mailed yesterday.
Yep.
We did check the mail.
I think me and all my friends got it on Friday
Okay.
that I knew of. Okay.
Saturday.
But yeah, if they don't want to go online, they can come in and talk to me. I am super busy
Yeah,
right now.
I know.
But if they want to speak briefly and I can give them some hard copy, a packet to look through, that would be fine.
Can you explain the taxes? Because that's a common
Yeah,
question
so
is,
there's
my taxes are going to go
one of
up.
the biggest immediate feedbacks we get when we say, hey, we're changing zoning districts. People immediately think that my taxes are going up. If you change me into commercial, you're going to change me from residential to commercial, my taxes are going to go up. Or vice versa, or whatever. The taxes and assessor's office are operating on different, we're different, we work together, but taxes are based on use. So the assessor's office is actually looking at things online, boots on the ground. They're actually seeing what are you actually using this as. So even if we zone it as a commercial or a semi-commercial space, such as multi-use, if you are still a residential unit and you're using it as such, that is what you'll be taxed as. So it is not taxed based on your zoning district. It's taxed on your use. Now, if you take a residence and turn it into a short-term rental, now you have created a commercial space. We will see that through your listings and whatnot, and being boots on the ground, seeing that people are coming and going. And so that will be taxed as a commercial place now. But it's taxed based on use, not on zone.
Some people in LaSalle are concerned about being changed into commercial out in LaSalle area, and what happens to their existing animal rights as far as keeping animals on their property. Is That, is that grandfathered in, or is it just?
So any use that can be shown currently will come in as a non-conforming if we're changing a zone on them. We've worked very hard in general to try to make the new zoning districts match with the things that are happening so that we have the least amount of non-conforming users coming in. A non-conforming use actually runs with the property. And so as long as they are always doing that use, even if it changes ownership, that can continue. If the use changes and a year lapses, and let's say you have a mechanic shop out back and you come in as non-conforming, and then they decide, oh, we don't want to do a mechanic shop anymore, and it sits for 2 years. And then somebody buys it and says, well, I want to do a paint shop now. Well, you can't because that non-conforming use has lapsed. But as long as people are continuing to use it as it is, you're okay. And that will transfer with property.
Even if it change ownership?
Mm-hmm. Correct. So even if it changes the property owner, that use goes with it.
So if they have horses or cows, things like that on their property, they would still be able to continue that use on their
Love it.
And so-
Chicken.
chickens, especially chickens,
I-
miniature horses and sheep.
I think another big question that we've had is the short-term rentals, because we are changing some more residential areas to multi-use to try to open up. Our main goal is to open up high-density housing, but also there's a lot of small commercial, backyard commercial stuff happening too, and we want to be able to permit some of that. So one question I have is, well, you're taking away our residential rights and we're going to have short-term rentals everywhere. If a subdivision has an HOA and CCNRs, that trumps us. And so a lot of subdivisions where people have had this particular complaint that everything's going to become short-term rentals, the subdivision is actually a lot stricter. Now that would be on the subdivision to enforce at that time. We're only going to uphold the county side of the ordinance. But if a subdivision wants to say, hey, there are absolutely no accessory dwelling units, there's no short-term rentals, they can make whatever rules and regulations they want as part of their homeowners association. And so that's just another layer of protection for residential space. Of if this group of people want to go that route, by all means, you can put that together and go that route. Overall, we're really trying to open up more opportunities for anything. We need something happening here. And so we don't want to sacrifice kind of our rural living and ag and residential. We want to try to keep those intact while also opening up more areas that something can happen.
To generate funds, huh?
Well, and jobs and
Yeah.
higher density housing. We've had this discussion a lot. The single family residence as a affordable housing option is gone. Getting into your own standalone home when the market value is between $500,000 and $750,000, that's not a starter home. So what other options do we have? And the other options we have are townhomes, condos, apartments. We really have to change the way that we are thinking about housing and change that model to allow for more of those higher density housing spaces so that people can get their foot in the door.
Well, having grown up in a country where there's no house ownership anymore, it's just all apartments and high-risers and things like that. That is one of the beauty of America, is the home ownership. I think one of the things we need to do is go to the basic and realize that we can no longer have a theater room, a game room, and maybe go back how it used to be the Rambler home.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think, and I know people there in the business of building, they like to build the bigger homes, but in a way, it's nice to be able to still have the dream of owning your own home, because that is what makes you feel more free when you have freedom of home ownership, you know.
Right,
You-
your own
you-
four walls and your own yard,
Well,
and
and you benefit from that, you know, like my husband and I, we retire, we have a home, we pay for it, and we own that home, and it's such a security for us.
Mhm.
But if we were living in an apartment, we still have to pay taxes and things like that, but you just don't understand what it's like to have paid rent your whole life, and your children will keep paying rent, and there's no, but, so I hope that we can still keep in mind as we look for opportunities for smaller home. You know, people that build those ramblers, they had later on they made a garage type of thing in the back where they can drive through. And so I think that we can still kind of innovate for ideas. And I know that some of the buildings that were originally in Blanding, and they do this in lots of other countries. They have the main floor is their business, the upstairs their home, and so I think there's alternative to still have.
and
that
we've
dream
tried to
of
promote that model in several of our zoning
uh-huh,
districts where there's commercial space below and apartments up top.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, so
and
one other thing I tried to explain, not knowing for sure what the car said, is that basically the, the area is gonna, areas are growing. If we don't have a plan, they're gonna grow in a way that it's hazard. I mean, for fire, there's no way for people to going in and out of the area, and it makes them more, um, planning and zoning is a good thing to help us, grow. And I always say we need more income as a county. We do need more income, so we're being squeezed, and that's for us is a last frontier, especially the areas that we're trying to um, do planning and zoning to be more uniform. And not only that, the counties, we revising brochures, procedure manuals, everything. We're trying to come to where we can feel more, uh, so people don't come and look for loopholes to sue us or whatever. And they help us better to manage the county and to grow, I mean, for the future. So, and I know you guys have been working hard. I've been in the planning and zoning meetings, and there's lots of fruitful thoughts there, and so I appreciate your work. And
when I want to reiterate, Sylvia kind of brushed this. We're really trying to support incorporated areas, Blanding, Monticello, Bluff, and so we didn't want to distract from that. So we have a lot of like community commercial outside of Monticello or multi-use outside of Monticello. We would love for Monticello downtown to get going and for Blanding downtown to get going and Bluff downtown to get going. But we've tried to zone accordingly so that we can support those city centers and not distract from that. But also opening up more opportunities for growth around them.
It used to be in the past with our zoning maps, so we had highway commercial all along the highway, so it was 1,000-foot stretch through there that was zoned highway commercial. We've eliminated that, so it focuses more of your attention. It pushes more of the commercial, in closer to the towns and cities that are here, and then looked at like areas in Eastland at the main intersections, up in LaSalle, main intersections up there to focus that highway commercial in those pockets rather than throughout the whole entire county along the highway. And so we're hoping that will kind of help just concentrate things, but yet the new zoning along there still kind of allows for a little bit of a hybrid. There has been a lengthy discussion when you talk about affordable housing. and I don't think we've resolved it yet, is regarding the RVs and RV long-term living. And so one of the things that the Planning Commission is considering is that possibility. We get a lot of individuals here that are now living in their RVs for full-time residency throughout the county. We hear it from our government partners. You know, you just had a presentation by State Fire. One of the things from them to get this assistant fire warden here was the caveat that we will let you live in this summer in an RV. And so we're starting to see that trend line just here in the state of Utah, I think across the board. There is some concerns on that, the long-term living in an RV. RVs were never meant to be long-term residents. And so the safety code, things like that really aren't for long-term living and long-term residents. But there are some planning commissioners that are, you know, hey, that's affordable nowadays, and so why not allow for that to be a long-term resident? I mean, for us, on the tax collection side of it, when you purchase an RV, you pay, you know, to license through DMV, but there's no property tax or personal property tax that's collected off of an RV, because that's what it is. It's supposed to be that recreational vehicle that's mobile, and it's not affixed to specific properties. And so there have been discussions about allowing them to affix to the property itself with a footing or a foundation and continue that long-term stay until housing becomes available here. And so that one's been an interesting discussion to see how that goes back and forth. I don't think it's been resolved
This
yet.
one is very messy because we currently have so many residents. That's the only option. And even in situations where maybe it's seasonal, we have a lot of seasonal workers that come here. Some under our own roof here that have been living with the whole family in an RV. And so we want to make it accessible, while also how do we get people up the ladder of housing and push them into better things without having, you know, the hookups would have a building permit, but otherwise we don't have any sort of eyes on what's happening there. And we definitely don't want people living in squalor or not having proper sanitation. And so there's a lot of issues that come with it. And quite honestly, we're pretty 50-50 split on the Planning Commission of for or against the idea. And legally, I don't know. I don't even know where to start on how to enforce that. You know, if we allow for it, how do we enforce, hey, we think that these guys are just dumping it out the back? Or
we have a property in LaSalle that's doing that very thing, where they have the main structure, the main home, and then outside of that, they've got several residents that are living in the RVs around that home. And so we've kind of been waiting to see where this new ordinance goes and where it develops, if it allows for RV long-term living, or is it just, you know, in our ordinance now, we do allow for a temporary conditional use for an RV. If you're building a home, you know, you pull up your RV, you live in that while you construct your home. So we do allow for that type of a scenario, but it's a temporary, it's not a long-term fix. We worry on the planning side of it when, you know, say you have a $500,000 home, somebody buys the property next to you, they pull in an RV and set up that RV right there on that property. Well, there's going to be a difference in value from your $500,000 home to your $50,000 RV. And so we're kind of worried about what that would do within our zones. Another thing that we've been working on is the overnight rental. This has kind of probably been the biggest holdup in our planning, is allowing for overnight rentals in our zones, but going to a permit system where if you want to have an Airbnb, an overnight rental, you have to come in and fill out the proper paperwork, be issued a permit, and in that permit, it'll have the regulations and requirements to operate the overnight rental. So, for example, if you go to an overnight rental here in San Juan County, it may or may not have on the wall who owns it or who to contact for an emergency. Typically, you go to whoever's renting it to you to complain or file issues. But what we don't have is on the enforcement side of it. You know, if there's a nuisance and it's after hours, well, who does the sheriff call? And so by having that permit system, we'll be able to look up that information and contact them. And in the new ordinance, it states in there that if you are operating an Airbnb, you have to be available within, I think it's 2 hour
2 hours.
time frame to respond to any nuisance call on those individuals that are staying there. So we're hoping to put more of the policing responsibility on those owners that own the Airbnbs or those managing companies that manage those. But through that permit system, we'll also be able to regulate who and where they're located in the county. And so we would, on the structure right now that we're trying to figure out is, you know, do you allow for, you know, 9 Airbnbs in a subdivision, and if those 9 are already permitted and taken up, that's all there can be in that subdivision. And so we're kind of looking at trying to figure out how to simplify that, allow it in our zoning, but yet regulate it through their own policing. And so when you take, and this will be something that we'll face as well, I was approved for overnight rental and now you changed my zoning, it doesn't allow for it. They would continue to be a non-conforming overnight rental, but still have to come forward and get a permit. They would still have to, you know, make sure that if there's already 9 in that subdivision, you know, how are we going to address that to make sure that there's some equality in those people that have already been approved for those overnight rentals.
And our GIS system that's coming along nicely and will be publicly available at some point in the next year, we'll have those overnight rentals identified so that people can see, because we also get that I don't know if it's an overnight rental, but it seems like there's a lot of people coming and going, so they can see if it's registered with us, and kind of help our communities call in those who are not registered. Part of that registration will be a actual boots on the ground inspection, because we do have several places that are probably not great for having guests stay in, and looking at a lot of safety measures like smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors and things like that.
And that's the interesting thing too that Kristen had mentioned is, you know, when you look at some of the Airbnbs that we don't know about or we know about and we haven't enforced on them yet, they're also, because they are acting as a business, they are also supposed to pay their personal property tax. So that means the contents inside of that building also need to be registered and can be taxed through the assessor's office. Well, we know that that's not happening. And so with this permitting system, it also requires them to file their personal property taxes on that unit. And so it is that requirement to keep your permit. If they don't, then we have the ability to take that permit away. Same with the nuisances. If those people that they rent to continue to cause a nuisance in the county, then they can also have that permit revoked for them just for not following our ordinance.
Yeah, and the assessor's office has had a hell of a time trying to figure out who's residential versus who's an overnight rental, and so this way will really help clean up those records as well.
So I have a question. Do you know, I think of all the things I see as you guys talking about is the dealing with this situation. And the thing is, are we grandfathering the ones that are there right now, or are we going to keep encourage new ones to grow? And the thing is, I got some relatives that live in this nice subdivision. Nice neighborhood, nice everything, safe for children, safe for everything. One of the owners, the one of the house, decide to keep that house But in those days, opportunity to invest and buy another home was really good. So they went by another home. They had renters, and then the neighborhood to change, and then somebody else thought, well, that's a good idea. So that pretty soon, the whole neighborhood changed, and and so, you know, some of the people could not sell their home because just the neighborhood. So sometimes, you know, I had talked to people that live among this situation, and they don't want to complain because they don't want the neighbors to not like
Sure.
them. And so if it's a nice, peaceful neighborhood, and we keep allowing more and more strangers being, you know, in your neighborhood all the time. So that is something that I think it's a tough decision. With
Yeah.
all the reasons that Mac is naming, I mean, they're getting away with lots of things. It'd be nice to have uniform, but in a way, how do we keep a neighborhood too with
Sure.
Sylvia, is that
And-
in the city or in the county? That's happening?
I was talking about my situation? Or
No,
was that-
what you're talking about.
Well, I
You're talking
think,
about the city or the county, because that's two different entities.
yeah, no, I talking whatever people that from, you know,
Just in general, that concept.
yeah,
And to answer your very first question, it's both. We're trying to zone some areas that we would like to get back into that very quiet neighborhood. We're trying to zone
But
them
you're not trying
out.
to zone anything within the cities, are you?
Correct.
No.
Right. Just unincorporated.
and so how many of the cities in Spanish in the valley there are incorporated?
Well, Spanish Valley is our biggest
City, and
struggle with the short-term rental balance.
Are they incorporated? Or
No.
No.
Well, so there's people from Spanish Valley that have talked to me.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of areas we're trying to get back into a neighborhood, a long-term neighborhood. That is just going to take time because we can't take any rights away from people who are currently doing it. So they'll come in as a non-conforming use. If they ever stop doing it, that will go back into a long-term home. But it's going to take time for that to turn over.
How does this new zoning map affect Spanish Valley? Does it change anything in Spanish Valley?
It changes a lot in Spanish Valley.
So,
We're trying to get it organized. If when I did, I went literally door to door and wrote down what was there. And there are some areas that are Mod Podged really bad. You've got a 50-50 split between small business, whether that's a short-term rental or a mechanic shop out back or a t-shirt printing shop or whatever, and a long-term residence. And we got into that mess by not having clear zoning standards and not having anybody enforce it. So we're kind of on the tail end of trying to clean it up. And how do we get as many people permitted as possible while maintaining the integrity of the overall master plan?
So your neighborhoods that you're trying to transition out of the short-term rental, do you have a plan in place for proving that they have stopped? Because the burden of proof would fall on us.
Right. Yeah, no, we've been working on what that looks like. We have several tracking systems, and it's going to be a lot more driving around, seeing what's going on, to be able to prove those types of things. What we don't want is people who are renting it, like, now this is town, but down in Bluff, there was a lot of people who rented out their house for the eclipse. They rented it out one weekend for $3,000. Well, does that classify short-term rental or long-term residence or what? And what we don't want is people who are just renting it now and then. We would like that to go back into a long-term residence. Now, if you have made a business out of short-term rentals and that is your livelihood and that's your business and you're hustling it and trying to rent it out as much as you can, we want to promote that business to provide for that family. But it's a tricky one.
Mac, you and Kristen, Do we have a nuisance ordinance in the county?
So, if you remember back, Mitch had presented the nuisance ordinance to you. You had asked for some changes in that ordinance, and so nothing's been officially adopted. However, we've taken sections of that ordinance, what he presented, and placed it in the new zoning ordinance, and so it'll have teeth in there for those nuisances that Mitch had talked about. So when
Because we had that
we had that
problem out
discussion.
at Meadows
Elk
where
Meadows is
the
exactly
one guy was building his home.
had his radio
He's
too loud.
working late at
Yeah,
night, early
yeah.
in the morning, had his late radio blasting.
Yes, exactly.
The sheriff department went out and said, creating a nuisance because we don't
Yep.
have a nuisance ordinance.
Yes, and so we're sticking. There is a nuisance section in our land use ordinance that will refer to that, or it takes sections out of that. We're also, that discussion that we had. Are we a fence in, fence out county?
Yep.
We're making sure that we have that language in that ordinance as well, so that it's reflective
What
of
is the
that
language
discussion.
you're fencing or fence
So
out?
that one is with the attorneys because Brittany came and presented, some ideas to you, but we've never had those murders get in the way. And so where those murders have been getting in the way of what they're trying to do, it's put some of this stuff on the back burner. But you had given her the marching orders of kind of what you guys' preferences were during that discussion, and she was going to finalize that. We still do by law have to have a separate ordinance for the fence in, fence out. But we'll be working with her to make sure that our language mirrors what her thoughts are on that. And then if we have to adjust, we have to adjust. But it's just these things
We're
are.
a fence out right now.
We are a fence out. Yep. Because if we're a fence in, that's a lot of rancher cost,
Oh,
and
man.
that's what we heard about during that discussion. Is they can't afford fencing, but a new development coming in should be able to fence out.
Plan for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's under legal review right now. We are hustling day and night. The radio was on loud last night here. Don't call me in. To try to get this done by Friday. And so hopefully this gets kicked out to Planning Commission on Friday, and hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, that will also be posted online for public to view then. So stay tuned with that planning website, and I've made it very clear that a timestamp of when things changed.
Do you have any feedback yet from Spanish Valley?
Yeah, so we've hosted 2 community work sessions and an online platform, and so we've gathered a lot of that, and that's actually in your packet, this public comment summary.
Does it change anything in Pat Creek?
Yeah, Pat Creek just came up at our last meeting, and Pat Creek currently, as of the June 2013 map, is a multi-use zone. We kicked around changing it to residential, but then after looking at properties, we put it into recreational support, which is one of our more protected zones. But based on the use that's already up there, which is a mashup between residents and short-term rentals, basically, we felt that recreational support was the best fit. It is, with it being multi-use right now, it's really like the old zoning map, that really opens up that area to a lot. And so we wanted to pull that back just a little bit.
I just want to make a comment. This is a big job you guys undertake. And I sit in the back and watch you guys, through all this process here at the planning zoning meetings. When I go through Spanish Valley in that area, I always think of a fire, the hazard, the way. And the thing is, that area is going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing and growing, and it's going to be more and more complicated if we don't do something. So I'm so appreciative as a commissioner for what you and the commission, Planning Zoning Commission, have been working on. I know they'll take time, especially with the cottage industries you have there. People we can't just go and change it all at once because it's a structure how they're able to function there and it's income and different things. But it's nice that we have the structure to keep building and growing. And eventually, lots of things will take care. When we first moved to Blanding, the city had lots. There was lots of animals, lots, things like that. But now, with time, things are changing. And so, I don't want just by my question to think I question everything. I was just when I ask questions, basically for Sylvia Steps information and not to keep making fool of myself. So at least I have a better answer. And I know what it's like to have a project at work. When I have a big thing at work, it doesn't stay here. I keep thinking day and night and in between, and so I know you have been through lots of work, and the team has been doing that, and so I'm very appreciative.
Thank
I
you.
was and I'm very supportive of what you guys do, and anyway,
We're close, getting closer. Yeah, and people, anybody can send comments to me. Those get forwarded onto our planning commissioners. So we'll accept comments right up through June 27th and July 2nd if this goes as we would like to see it move forward.
I see in here, in the document, lighting restrictions. Are there lighting restrictions in some of the zones where the lighting has to go down in the
So
air?
this has been some debate of even whether to include these or not. We do mention water conservation and dark skies in our general plan, and so we've addressed that here. But these are not required. These are recommendations in both those chapters. And they're pretty standard across the board. Here's what classifies a dark sky. But we have been thinking about omitting that or not, just because we don't want to confuse people on, I have to do this.
I think the difficulty with it, and I think you've seen it, if you pay attention to Grand County, is they had pretty heavy restrictions on lighting, and they incorporated in their zoning. Then I think it was about maybe 2 months ago, they had to kind of step back and say, okay, we're not gonna enforce this just yet. We don't have the capacity here. If we put heavy lighting restrictions, I get several emails a year. Just, hey, this new building has such bright lights. You need to come out and tell them not to. And, these lights aren't the appropriate fitting. And I'm like, we don't have the capability or capacity to go down and look at lumens and have a lumen counter to enforce lighting on somebody. For us, it kind of gets a little bit more restrictive when you place things in your ordinance, and especially if we can't enforce it or we don't have the capacity to enforce, don't stick it in our zoning ordinances. Building code nowadays has really, on an international perspective, has really advanced on energy efficiency, which already has energy efficiency measures in new buildings and new building types and the lighting schemes, the power schemes, all of that are going into new development. We don't have the capacity to go to some 50-year-old business that's been there in operation in Spanish Valley all these years and tell them you need to yank those lights off because you're out of compliance. And so I'm hoping that we can avoid going that measure, and through new development, new construction, the lighting schemes are going to change naturally just because the International Building Code already is requiring that. And so we've modified some of the language to just be more reflective of, the dark skies, and that standard, and then just leave it at that. We're not going to go, I had an email on these new condos that came in and their lights are too bright. And I'm like, well, how bright are they? You know, and so it's just a new building, and all of a sudden you see lights out your back window. I can understand, but you know, are they really that bright? And we just don't have the capacity to enforce something like
Now,
that.
the
Neither did Grand
municipalities
County.
may
Municipalities can.
Yeah.
adopt an ordinance on dark sky, or
Yeah.
does Bluff have one?
I believe so, but it's
Yes.
also been a pain to enforce and non-conforming. If
Sure.
things are already there, how do you force people to upgrade their fork out the
there
money
was
to
that one
upgrade?
business there in Bluff that had to pay thousands, you know, to upgrade his lights when they did that ordinance. But they enforced. I mean, it's a pretty easy town to enforce on, a couple blocks wide, you know. And so, but for us throughout the whole entire county,
But I
we
don't think
don't.
Blanding or
we don't have
Monticello
that.
do they?
Mm.
And we may, this is still up for debate. We might leave it in there because it's kind of it's a good recommendation for if people are doing planned unit development or big development, like hey,
But just as a recommendation, not as.
but not a
shall.
requirement.
Well,
Live
then-
on the
then you
red.
have safety.
Reds, you're always in the dark sky, aren't you?
You start having a dark city, then you have safety issues.
Right, so
you
it's
know?
balancing that.
Like, you know, I drive through the street in Blanding and they don't have lights, and lots of Native American students that wear dark clothes, and sometimes being older, you know, they just wear dark clothes, and they're walking the street, and after dark, if it
Skateboarding in a black hoodie.
but you know what I mean,
My
it's
kids
scary.
are-
I mean,
My kids do that same thing. They're black sweatshirts down the dark road. Yeah.
well, we live in the neighborhood of college, and
Yeah.
the students just walking around, and it is very scary.
Yeah.
When I'm driving in the dark, you know, just especially if they're not watching for cars, they just
Hmm.
and so anyway, I think it's a safety issue, lights, and more than one reason. You know, that can be one. Another one is just, you know, I don't know. But
So Kristen, you want to adopt this at our first meeting in July, right?
That is our hope and prayer.
But you have this meeting on the 27th.
Two public.
So we have a work
Public
session on the
hearing.
24th with Planning Commission.
Are we supposed to be those public hearings?
It's planning commission. They're the
Planning
recommending body.
Commission does
Yeah.
that.
So the 24th will be a long night for Planning Commission to work through anything. And then we should have those final documents posted by the next day. And then it goes for recommendation to Planning Commission on the 27th.
Okay.
And that will get kicked to you guys on the 2nd if it goes like that. And I sure hope it goes like that by this point in time.
I'll bet.
The postcards have been sent, and that's kind of something that, you know, a lot of us haven't seen here in this county, where we're getting the postcards now. The law became pretty specific that anytime you change your land use ordinance like this, you have to notify every
Everybody.
property owner. And so that's why, and you'll hear it in Blanding and in Monticello. I was like, well, why did I get a postcard? We don't have a way to extrapolate the data and just do the unincorporated
Yeah.
areas of the county on property ownership. And so we just took the whole list and just mass mailed everybody. A little bit more expensive, but yet we covered our bases. We can check that box and we send out a postcard. Everybody knows that there's going to be a new land use ordinance adopted or modified and adopted.
The one miss is if people are renting, because this went off of tax roll information, so it went to the property owner. So we've tried to get the information out to those who might be renting or otherwise, and it's around. I hope people will be talking about it, you know, just casually in the community, so that the word's out. But we had to be this far out in order to do our due diligence legally. And that's why the dates are kind of set, pretty critically set,
If we don't
so
get
that
it
we don't have to
adopted, that's a new
postcard
postcard.
4,000 people again.
Yeah, I think they're out.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think everybody's received the
Good.
postcards
Yep.
already. As far as I know, you
Good.
guys. Haven't checked your mail.
Brian checks the mail.
Commissioner Hart?
Yeah, and if you have any
But
comments,
on Thursday, I got to talk to 2 people on Thursday, so they in Blanding did get the card.
Yeah, we're not changing city ordinances or city land
yeah, this
use.
is only unincorporated.
Just
Yeah,
unincorporated.
only
We didn't have a way to
Just
calculate the
yeah.
data.
Anyway, so
Cool. And if you guys have any comments, you can email them to me, and I will also forward those to the planning commissioners.
Kristen, how often are these updated? Like, when was the last update and what's
2011.
2011?
And that has caused us some problems because
So we had two. So you have the 2011 overarching ordinance, and then in 2019 we went through a process just for Spanish Valley, and created a Spanish Valley ordinance that was highly incomplete, and that was
Off of a draft.
that was under another commission, and they
And having
adopted
two
the
has
draft
made
form, yes.
issues.
And so that's caused some legal problems because you have this overarching and then this carve out piece. You'll notice in this new ordinance, everything is under one. And kind of the discussion that I had with one of the planning commissioners that was like, hey, we need to have special uses for Spanish Valley. And I'm like, if you want special uses for Spanish Valley, you need to become a town. You know, we're not, I mean, you're under the county. And so let's be a county ordinance, county-wide, and have it applied county-wide, not a Spanish Valley specific. Like, if you want to be specific, incorporate anytime, you know, but if not, then we've got to make sure that it's compatible throughout the whole entire county in its ordinance and language.
I was curious when you passed the 2011. Did you have lots of people complaining in the north part of the county?
I think
Because
land
now they
use-
like that ordinance. They said we won the 2011.
It
so-
I
was
can't tell you 2011, but 2019 was chaos.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was utter chaos, and you know, I think there were some groups that were paid attention to more than the normal citizenry, and so that kind of got things out of kilter, whether right or wrong. But they did similar as they had the open houses like we did. When I went to the open houses, there was a lot of disagreement with the consultant, and the consultant just in one meeting just got so fed up he just sat down. It's like, I'm done. And so I think in the adoption meeting he had tried to steer it right and say, hey, you know, the one that you're looking at, that draft ordinance, it was just a draft. That was our starting point. And then we've gone through these public hearings and met with the public, and here's what we are on a final. And the commission at the time, they chose to adopt the draft version, and that's kind of got us into
Or
problems
was it
since
an
then.
organization that chose to?
Or an organization that chose to help.
and that has
behind the
been really
scenes.
difficult, and I've had to be very tactful with the public on that to tell them that the draft is our legal standing document. That's awkward.
Yeah.
So there's some things we learned from that we need to fix and get right this time.
But we are receiving public comments, and part of your packet is some of those comments that we've received to date. You know, that we've provided from our mapping system, as well as just emails that have come in from residents. And we go through, and in similar fashion, we give these to the planning commission so that the planning commissioners are fully aware of all the comments and kind of the pulse out there on things. And then the planning commission kind of makes their decisions and gives us the guidance that they recommend, and then from that will be that recommendation from the planning commission to
And you know,
adopt.
being around the planning and zoning commission, it takes lots of discussion. It's not just, you know, unison, we're going to do this. You know, there's some of the commission, they stand up, they're walking around trying to figure out. I mean, there's lots of action here, and there's some times where there are long hours of just trying to resolve
Well, they've
it.
had
So
some
I-
long hours.
you know, and
Yes.
so you know, by the time it gets to me, I know the work that has been done. And so I just want to say that's my favorite meeting because I just sit in the back and I just don't.
When they're long, I mean, sometimes we've been going 4 hours,
Oh, yeah.
and
And some of those had to travel, after. and
yeah.
it's
So I
kinda-
I really appreciate all the time that they've done. I gotta feed them again on Monday, so that they'll come back.
And you're really good I mean, I think everybody listen to each other and they come to a consensus and it's not an easy sometimes. Sometimes it's just maybe one thing that holds it up. And so it is a lot by the time it gets to this commission,
Yeah.
what they have thought all the angles possible. And I guess we may have some questions and things like that, but by the time they get to me, I have seen the process and it makes my job easier because in the beginning I didn't know, how to vote sometimes and things like that. But I know because I have seen the process, and so I just so appreciative.
Yeah, we've had
Especially you because you had to be the one that kind of bring the orchestra together,
sometimes you got free trumpet in the back.
Sometimes we have to pick
Yeah,
the
we've
ones
had
and-
5 3 to 4 hour sessions on this. It's strictly on this. We're gonna have 2 more.
Yeah.
Hopefully Monday's not a 6 hour kind of session, but by Monday we're not leaving till it's done. So hopefully by the time you see it, it's produced all.
So thank you
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
a lot.
Thanks,
Good
Kristen.
job.
All right, I think we got 2 items out of the way. That leaves us with an executive session item, commissioners.
Can I make a motion? We go into a closed executive session to discuss the character and professional
Sorry.
competence.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to go into executive session.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Stubbs. Any comments or questions? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 3 in favor. We're now going to move into executive session.
Okay, we got to stop some recordings and wait until those recordings are all offline.